The great hall of the Zaether Palace shimmered under the light of floating crystals. Each crystal radiated colors that shifted like oil on water, casting vibrant reflections across the polished floors. At the far end of the hall sat Queen Valessa, her long, silvery hair falling over her shoulders, and her violet eyes scanning the assembly of nobles before her. She was young, strong, and feared by many, yet her heart carried a heavy weight. Today she was to meet the man she would marry not for love, but for politics. The council had decided that the marriage was necessary. After decades of skirmishes, along the borders with human colonies, the humans' planet had offered an alliance. Valessa, the proud queen of the Zaether Empire, was to marry a human named Ethan Cross. The nobles whispered that it was a humiliation. To marry a human, they said, was to bring the empire to its knees. For humans were weak, small, fragile, primitive. Valessa did not share their disdain. She had fought in battles, seen her people die to protect their home, and understood that strength came in many forms. Still a human? She had not yet met him, and she wondered silently what sort of man could walk among the stars with the audacity to claim could be her equal. The doors of the hall opened with a sound like rushing wind. A human stepped in. Ethan Cross. He was taller than she expected, but not overwhelmingly so. His brown hair was neatly trimmed, his eyes a steady green, and his movements calm and deliberate. He wore simple attire, nothing like the ceremonial robes of the Zaether nobles, but there was something about his presence that immediately demanded attention. It was not arrogance. It was not power. It was quiet confidence. Valessa rose from her throne, the nobles murmuring in astonishment. Many had expected a frail man, trembling before the queen. Yet Ethan walked forward with measured steps, his eyes scanning the room but never flinching under their scrutiny. When he stopped before her, he bowed deeply, a gesture so precise and respectful that even the most critical nobles had to look away. "Queen Valessa," he said, his voice clear and steady, "it is an honor to meet you." The words were simple, yet they carried weight. Valessa studied him. There was no hesitation, no false charm. He did not attempt to impress, to boast. He simply stood, ready to face what awaited him. Valessa inclined, her head slightly. "Ethan Cross," she replied, "you have come far to be here. I hope your journey was not too difficult." Ethan's lips curved into a small, polite smile. "The journey was long, but not unbearable. I am glad to arrive." A ripple of murmurs spread among the nobles. Such composure, such politeness. It seemed almost unnatural to them. They exchanged glances, some scowling, some whispering under their breath. "Your Majesty," said one elder noble, stepping forward, "this human he comes from a small, insignificant planet. He cannot possibly understand the customs or the responsibilities of the Zaether Empire." Ethan did not flinch. His gaze remained steady. "I have studied your customs as much as I could. I am aware of my position and my responsibilities. I am here to learn, to support, and to honor your laws." The noble's lips tightened. Even in defiance, Ethan did not yield. Valessa felt a small spark of interest. Perhaps he was not as fragile. As her counsel claimed, perhaps there was something more. Over the following hours, Ethan was introduced to the palace, its rituals, and the strict codes of the court. He listened, observed, and asked questions not to show ignorance, but to understand. Valessa walked beside him, noting every subtle gesture. His patience was remarkable. Even when nobles tried to provoke him, he remained calm. Later in the private garden, Valessa finally allowed herself a moment of honesty. "Tell me, Ethan," she said, her voice low and steady, "do you truly understand what it means to be married to a queen of the Zaether Empire?" He looked at her. She noticed something that set him apart from anyone she had met before, a spark of intelligence, a quiet fire beneath calm waters. "I understand that it is a great responsibility," he said. "I do not claim to know everything, but I promise to stand beside you and do what is right for the Empire." Valessa studied him in silence. There was no false bravado, no exaggerated claims of heroism, just a human who carried himself with dignity. The first night in The palace was quiet, but sleep eluded Valessa. She lay in her chamber, staring at the ceiling, thinking of Ethan. The noble's warnings echoed in her mind: weak, primitive, unworthy. Yet the man she had met today did not appear weak. He had the patience to endure ridicule, the calm to navigate alien politics, and the respect to treat her as an equal even before marriage. Meanwhile, Ethan's own thoughts were focused. He had studied Earth's defenses, learned alien languages, and mastered survival in environments far harsher than his home planet. The Zathar might see humans as primitive, but he knew the strength his people carried: resilience, adaptability, courage, and he knew he would need it here. The next morning, Valessa decided to test him in small ways. She asked him to attend a council meeting, observing debates where nobles argued over resources and military strategy. Many expected him to falter, to misunderstand or offend. But Ethan simply listened, taking notes, asking pointed questions when necessary, and even offering suggestions grounded in logic and experience. By the end of the session, several nobles were reluctantly impressed. "He is competent," one muttered to another. "Perhaps not as weak as we assumed." Valessa noticed this and allowed herself a small smile. The human had not yet revealed his full strength, but she sensed it beneath the surface. The quiet confidence, the careful observation, these were not signs of weakness. They were the tools of someone who could survive, and even thrive, in this alien world. Days passed, and Ethan continued to navigate the complexities of Zathar life. He learned their combat styles, their etiquette, and their politics. He smiled, politely at ridicule, never retaliating, never showing fear. Valessa observed him constantly, fascinated by his composure and his resilience. One evening, as a storm raged outside the palace windows, an alarm sounded. Shadows moved along the walls. An intruder had breached the palace defenses. Guards rushed to the scene, but Ethan acted instinctively. In a matter of seconds, he neutralized the threat with swift, precise movements. Valessa arrived just in time to see the intruder disarmed. Lying unconscious, while Ethan stood calm and unscathed, her eyes widened. The human her husband Subi was not merely surviving here. He was excelling. The nobles who witnessed the event were stunned. "How?" one whispered. Another shook his head in disbelief. Valisa's heart raced, not with fear, but with curiosity. She had underestimated him, she realized. And in that moment, a small spark of respect, perhaps even admiration, began to grow Ethan. Noticing her gaze, simply nodded. "It is my duty to protect this palace. And you, your majesty." Valessa said nothing. Words would not capture her. Growing awareness that this human was far more than he seemed. He carried strength, intelligence, and courage in ways that no one had expected. And perhaps, she thought quietly, this alliance born of politics could become something greater. As the storm continued to rage outside, Valessa sat by the window, watching the lightning illuminate the palace towers. She thought of the journey ahead, of alliances, battles, and the challenges that awaited them. And she thought of Ethan, standing quietly in the hall, already commanding respect in ways she had not anticipated. The human who was meant to be a mere pawn had already begun to reveal a power that went beyond physical strength. And Valessa realized that the story of this marriage and perhaps the future of the Zathar Empire was only just beginning. The morning light spilled into the palace courtyard, turning the marble floors into rivers of gold. Queen Valessa walked beside Ethan, her mind still swirling with questions about the human who had defied the palace intruder with such skill. The nobles whispered behind their hands, exchanging glances full of suspicion and awe. Some were angry that a human had displayed more ability than most Zathar soldiers. While others were quietly impressed, Valessa stopped near the central fountain, its waters dancing in arcs under the morning sun. "You seem different from what I expected," she said, her voice soft, almost hesitant. "Not weak, not clumsy. Not at all what my counsel predicted." Ethan looked at her, his green eyes calm but attentive. "I am aware of the expectations," he said simply. "I did not come here to prove myself to anyone." came to honor my word and stand beside you." Valessa studied him, noticing the quiet dignity in his posture. There was no arrogance, only discipline and confidence. He seemed entirely at ease, as if the palace, the nobles, and even the threats that surrounded her were all things he could handle. She had not expected that from a human. Humans, from what she had been told, were fragile, impulsive, and unpredictable. Yet Ethan seemed steady, unshaken by everything. The day moved forward with lessons in Zathar culture, military strategy, and palace etiquette. Ethan learned quickly, absorbing everything without complaint. When a group of nobles attempted to belittle him by assigning him trivial tasks, he performed them with precision and respect, never reacting to their mockery. This further intrigued Valessa. She wondered how a human could remain so calm, so observant, and so effective under constant scrutiny. Later, the council convened again, and Ethan was invited to participate. The topic was the ongoing border disputes with neighboring alien factions. Valessa observed closely as Ethan listened, taking in every detail. When he spoke, he was careful, choosing his words wisely, offering solutions that combined logic, practicality, and innovation. One of the senior generals frowned. "You speak with knowledge, human, yet your people are considered primitive. How can you propose strategies that rival our own centuries of experience?" Ethan's gaze did not waver. Experience is valuable, but adaptability is often stronger. My people have survived harsh conditions and threats beyond your borders. The ability to respond quickly, to adjust to unexpected situations, can be as effective as tradition. A murmur ran through the council chamber. Some nodded quietly while others scowled. Valessa felt a mix of pride and curiosity. She was beginning to understand that Ethan's strength was not only physical, but also mental, an intelligence that allowed him to see solutions the Zathar had overlooked. The day ended with a formal dinner. Nobles from various parts of the empire gathered, watching the human with scrutiny. Ethan moved with the same calm dignity, engaging in polite conversation, listening more than he spoke. Yet every word he did share carried meaning. Valessa noticed how he treated her not as a queen to be feared, but as a partner to be respected. There was no attempt to manipulate or impress, only honesty and patience. In the middle of the dinner, a young noble from the outer provinces decided to challenge him. "You come from a weak planet, human. You have no understanding of the Zathar ways. Can you even hold a weapon properly?" Ethan's green eyes met his. "Perhaps I cannot wield a weapon the way you do," he said calmly. "But I can use what I have learned to defend myself and those I am sworn to protect. A weapon is only as strong as the mind and heart that wields it." The noble laughed mockingly, but before he could continue, Ethan demonstrated with a small training blade he carried. Movements fluid, precise, and controlled, he disarmed the noble within seconds, leaving him stunned and embarrassed. Psst. The hall went silent. Nobles whispered, some in awe, some in anger, and Valessa could not help but smile faintly. "You see," she said softly, "he is not what he seems." Ethan looked at her with a small, polite smile. "I never claimed to be ordinary." That evening, Valessa walked through the palace gardens alone, contemplating the day. The human's reputation as weak seemed entirely false. Ethan's skill, intelligence, and composure challenged everything she had believed. Could it be that humans were underestimated because they were different? Because the Zathar judged them with arrogance and fear? Suddenly a messenger arrived, his wings beating rapidly. He carried urgent news. A faction from the northern borders had launched a surprise attack, seeking to test the strength of the Zathar Empire. The council convened immediately, with Valessa at the center. Alarm spread quickly through the palace, and whispers of panic filled the hall. The generals argued, debating strategy, supplies, and troop movements. Valessa noticed the confusion, the hesitation. Then she looked at Ethan. He stood quietly, observing. When a general turned to him, asking for his opinion, he did not hesitate. "The northern faction is small but organized," he said, his voice calm. "They rely on speed and deception. If we reinforce the northern gates, use flanking maneuvers, and position archers on elevated platforms, we can repel them without heavy losses. We must not underestimate their cunning, even if their numbers are few. The generals exchanged glances, skeptical at first. Yet, as Ethan outlined a plan, combining human tactical methods with Zathir military knowledge, a slow nod of approval spread among them. His approach was unorthodox, but logical, practical, and efficient. Valessa felt her respect growing. Here was a man who could think in ways her council could not. Here was a human who could defend her empire when others faltered. Next day, the northern forces arrived, moving swiftly to breach the outer walls. Zathir's soldiers were prepared, but the humans' strategy, Theon's strategy, proved superior. Troop formations shifted under his guidance, archers and soldiers moved in precise coordination, and the attackers found themselves trapped in a carefully planned ambush. Valessa watched from a balcony, her heart pounding. Humans had never been considered warriors among the Zathir, yet here was Ethan commanding the defense with calm authority. The battle was over before it had truly begun. The northern faction retreated, defeated with minimal casualties on the Zathir side. The nobles were stunned. Some clapped, some bowed in respect, and some muttered in disbelief. The rumor that humans were weak and insignificant began to crumble under Ethan's actions. After the battle, Valessa approached him in the courtyard, where soldiers were still regrouping. "You exceeded all expectations," she said quietly. I underestimated you." Ethan shook his head. "You did not underestimate me entirely. You saw my composure. I only revealed what was necessary." Valessa looked at him, understanding. Dawning in her eyes, "You are more than a human. More than I imagined. Your strength is not just in your skill, but in your mind, your calm, your ability to act when others panic." Ethan's small smile was modest, almost shy. "I am only doing what I must. To protect, to serve, and to honor my word. Strength takes many forms, Your Majesty." The palace was abuzz with discussion. The nobles whispered Ethan's name with new respect, their skepticism tempered by the undeniable proof of his skill. Valessa herself felt a mixture of pride and curiosity. How much more was hidden beneath his calm exterior? What other strengths had this human yet to reveal? That night, as the palace settled, Valessa found herself walking to the central tower. Ethan joined her silently, never intrusive, never demanding attention. The stars stretched across the sky, distant and cold, yet beautiful. "You changed today," she said softly. "Not just in the eyes of the nobles, but in mine. I do not understand all of you. Yet I am beginning to see that humans are not as fragile as I was told." Ethan's gaze met hers, steady and sincere. "Humans survive because we endure. We learn, adapt, and act when needed. It is not always strength in the obvious fore muscle or weapon, but in patience, intelligence, and will. That is our true power." Valessa remained silent for a moment, considering his words. She had known humans were resilient, but seeing it embodied in Ethan was different. It was tangible, real, and it challenged everything she had believed about power, worth, and alliance. As they stood together, the wind brushing past the tower, Valessa realized something else. This marriage, once thought a political necessity, was becoming something far more meaningful. Not Levat, at least not yet, but respect, trust. A partnership forged in understanding rather than obligation. Ethan, for his part, was already preparing for the next challenge. He knew that the Zathir Empire was far from safe, that threats lurked beyond the stars, and that proving himself once was not enough. But he was ready. Humans had survived far greater odds, and with Valessa by his side, they could face whatever the universe threw at them. The night deepened. The palace quiet, yet both knew that their journey was only beginning. Battles, intrigue, and challenges awaited. But for the first time, Valessa felt hope not because of prophecy or strength of armies, but because of the human who stood beside her, the man who had been underestimated, the man who would soon reveal the full extent of his strength. The palace awoke to a tense stillness, the calm before the storm. Reports had come from the outer sectors of the empire. A coalition of hostile factions had gathered, larger and more organized than any previously encountered. Their movements were swift, coordinated, and meant to strike decisively at the heart of the Zathar Empire. The nobles panicked, their fear bubbling beneath the surface. While Queen Valessa summoned her council in the Grand Hall, Ethan stood at her side, calm as ever, observing the flurry of activity. Maps of battlefields, troop positions, and supply lines covered the table before them. Generals argued heatedly, their voices rising and falling like storms. Valessa listened carefully, weighing each opinion, yet her gaze constantly returned. To Ethan, she trusted him more than any general present, not because of rank or experience, but because she had already seen the depth of his mind. "The Northern Coalition will attack from 3 directions," General Torvin declared, slamming a clawed hand on the table. "Our defenses are strong, but their numbers are overwhelming." "If we fail, we will not fail," Ethan interrupted, his voice calm but firm. Heads turned toward him. "Their strategy is predictable. They rely on intimidation, on the assumption that the Zathar will panic. That is where they are wrong. We will use their predictability against them." The generals blinked, unsure whether to respect or challenge him. Ethan continued, his finger tracing paths on the map. "If we split our forces into 3 sections, as they expect, we invite chaos. Instead, we will concentrate our strength at key choke points, using the terrain to our advantage. Archers and artillery will cover the high ground, while small strike teams harass their flanks. The coalition will believe they are advancing freely, but they will walk into a trap." A murmur ran through the council chamber. This was bold, unconventional, and unlike any Zathar strategy they had ever used. Valessa watched, impressed by Ethan's clarity and confidence. She had already begun to realize that humans did not always rely on brute force. They relied on intellect, adaptability, and observation. General Torvin scowled. "You speak as if you understand their tactics better than we do. Who are you to command Zathar forces?" Ethan met his gaze steadily. "I do not command because I wish to be superior. I command because the goal is survival. See what others do not. And if we act wisely, we will preserve lives, as in theirs." Valessa's voice cut through the tension. "He speaks with reason. We follow his guidance." The room fell silent. For the first time, the human husband of the queen held authority in the council. Preparations began immediately. Troops moved. Under Ethan's supervision, following precise instructions, supply lines were reinforced, archers positioned on cliffs, and patrols sent to scout enemy movements. He worked tirelessly, analyzing every variable, anticipating every possible threat. The nobles watched, some grudgingly impressed, others silently fearful that their judgments had been wrong. Days passed and the coalition advanced. Their forces were massive, their confidence high, yet every step brought them closer to Ethan's carefully laid trap. At dawn on the 4th day, the battle began. From the palace walls, Valessa observed the enemy's approach. Ethan's plan unfolded perfectly. Archers rained fire upon the advancing troops, while small squads struck swiftly at vulnerable flanks. The coalition faltered, confusion spreading through their ranks. Despite their numbers, they were trapped by terrain and tactics. Valessa felt a surge of pride and awe. Ethan was not just a human, he was a strategist, a commander, and a protector of the empire. His mind worked faster than any Zathar general she had ever seen, predicting movements, countering attacks, adapting instantly to new threats. In the midst of battle, a sudden alarm rang. A detachment of enemy soldiers had bypassed the traps and reached the palace gates. Panic threatened to spread, but Ethan remained calm. He grabbed a small communications device and coordinated a rapid response. Strike teams intercepted the intruders, cutting them off before they could do harm. Every move was precise, calculated, and effective. Valessa stood at the edge of the balcony, watching him in awe. The human's reputation as weak or primitive was meaningless here. In Ethan, she saw courage, intelligence, and leadership embodied in flesh. Hours passed, and the battle raged on. The coalition, disoriented and outmaneuvered, began to retreat. Their forces crumbled, unable to withstand. The combination of strategy and precision that Ethan had orchestrated. By nightfall, the battlefield was quiet. The enemy scattered and defeated. The nobles gathered in the aftermath, their faces a mix of astonishment and respect. Many approached Ethan cautiously, bowing or nodding, acknowledging his role in saving the Empire. Valessa herself stepped forward, her expression unreadable yet filled with a new admiration. "You have done what no one thought possible," she said softly, her voice carrying over the quiet courtyard. "You have defended the Zaether Empire and proven that more than I ever imagined." Ethan's response was modest, as always. "I did only what was necessary. The Empire and its people must survive, as all that matters." Valessa studied him. There was no pride, no desire for accolades. It's only focus, discipline, and a deep understanding of duty. She realized that the strength of humans, at least in this one, lay not in arrogance or show, but in calm, measured action and unwavering resolve. As the night settled, celebrations began across the palace. Soldiers and nobles alike honored their victory, yet whispers about Ethan's true abilities spread quickly. The idea that a human could think, act, and lead at such a level was revolutionary among the Zaether. Valessa walked with Ethan to the private gardens, away from the festivities. The air was cool, scented with alien flowers, and the stars reflected in the crystal fountains. "Today, you have done more than defend walls and gates," she said. "You have changed perceptions, including my own. I no longer see humans. As weak, you have shown me strength in ways I did not understand." Ethan's gaze met hers, steady and sincere. "Strength comes in many forms, Your Majesty. Some is visible, some is quiet, some lies in the heart, others in the mind. I have only revealed a part of what humans can do. There is more to come." Valessa felt a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. More to come? She had already seen skill, strategy, and courage beyond her expectations. What else could he possibly reveal? Yet for the first time, she did not fear it. Instead, she felt excitement, anticipation for what lay ahead. The next day brought new challenges. The Northern Coalition, defeated but not destroyed, sent emissaries seeking parley. They wanted terms, they wanted peace, yet they were wary of the human who had outmaneuvered their armies. Ethan led the negotiations, calm, polite, and precise. His words carried authority, his understanding of strategy evident in every proposal. He spoke with logic, foresight, and a keen sense of fairness. Leaving the emissaries both impressed and intimidated, Valessa watched from the side, silently realizing that his strength was not just in battle. It was in diplomacy, in insight, in the ability to anticipate, adapt, and act with clarity. He was not only a protector of the Empire's walls, but also its mind and voice in times of uncertainty. When the negotiations concluded successfully, the coalition agreed to terms favorable to the Zaether, their pride slightly bruised but their armies intact. The nobles could not deny it. The human had proven himself in war and diplomacy alike. Valessa felt a quiet pride swelling in her chest. She had underestimated him at first, but now she knew. This human was extraordinary. That evening, Valessa and Ethan walked through the palace corridors in silence. The stars above twinkled like distant diamonds, reflecting the calm after a storm. "Do you ever tire of all this?" she asked softly. "The politics, the battles, the constant scrutiny?" Ethan shook his head. "Tire, perhaps, but my purpose is clear: to protect, to serve, and to honor my word. That is enough to keep me moving forward." Valessa looked at him, realizing something profound. Humans, at least in this one, did not seek glory or recognition. They acted because it was right, because it was necessary. Their strength was quiet, internal, and unwavering. She felt a deep respect, one that went beyond admiration. It was trust. As they reached the central tower, Valessa allowed herself a rare moment of honesty, admitted Ethan. I thought you were just a common man. Did not see the strength, the courage, or the wisdom you carry. I was wrong, and I am grateful. Ethan looked at her with a faint smile. I do not need gratitude, only the opportunity to do what is right. That is enough. The night deepened, the palace quiet except for the soft rustle of wind through the alien trees. Valessa felt a sense of calm, a feeling she had not experienced in years of ruling. The empire was safe, for now, and the human who had been dismissed as weak had proven himself invaluable. Yet both knew that the universe held more challenges, more enemies, and greater threats. The victory was only the beginning. And Ethan, the human, who had already revealed strength beyond imagination, was ready to face whatever came next, Valessa realized, with a mixture of pride and anticipation that she was witnessing the beginning of something extraordinary. Not just the survival of her empire, but the emergence of a human whose abilities would change everything forever. The morning air was sharp with tension. Rumors had spread throughout the Zathar Empire that a far larger force was mobilizing beyond the outer borders. This coalition, unlike the northern faction that Ethan had already outmaneuvered, was vast, ruthless, and intent on conquering the empire. The palace trembled under the weight of fear and anticipation. Soldiers trained tirelessly, nobles argued endlessly, and Queen Valessa felt a sense of responsibility heavier than ever before. Ethan, as always, remained calm. He moved among the generals, examining maps and reports, his green eyes sharp with observation. He noticed patterns in the enemy's movements, weak points in their formations, and potential strategies that none of the Zathar generals had considered. He spoke with quiet authority, laying out a plan that combined defense, deception, and offense in a way the Empire had never seen. This is not merely a battle of strength, he said, pointing at the maps. It is a test of will, intelligence, and adaptability. We will use the terrain to divide them, bait them into traps, and strike where they are least prepared. Their confidence is their weakness. General Torvin scowled, as he had before. And you believe a human mind can outthink centuries of Zathar warcraft? Ethan did not flinch. It is not a matter of pride or superiority, it is a matter of logic. If we act with precision and foresight, we will survive, and they will fail. Valessa watched silently, recognizing once again that Ethan's strength was not brute force, but strategy, insight, and unwavering composure. He had already proven himself in battle, but this would be a test unlike any before. As the day progressed, scouts returned with reports. The enemy had split into multiple divisions, advancing rapidly and attempting to outmaneuver the palace's defenses. Panic began to spread among the generals, yet Ethan moved swiftly, assigning positions, issuing commands, and predicting the enemy's moves before they occurred. Soldiers began to follow his orders, surprised at how effective and precise they were. At dusk, the first wave of the coalition struck. Massive ships descended from the sky, while ground forces approached with mechanical precision. Zathar's soldiers fired their energy weapons, and the sound of combat filled the air. Valessa observed from a balcony, heart pounding, but she noticed something remarkable. Ethan moved through the chaos like a calm center in a storm. He anticipated attacks, redirected forces, and used the enemy's own strategies against them. In the center of the battlefield, a group of elite enemy soldiers managed to breach the palace's outer walls. Alarm rang across the corridors, and nobles panicked. Ethan, however, responded instantly. He grabbed a tactical device from a nearby aid and coordinated rapid response teams. Within moments, the intruders were surrounded, disarmed, and captured. The palace itself remained secure. Valessa could hardly believe her eyes. She had witnessed humans in combat before, but never with such precision, intelligence, and control. Ethan was not merely surviving, he was commanding the battlefield, protecting the empire, and doing so with unwavering calm as the battle continued. The enemy launched a full-scale assault on the central district. Massive war machines advanced, firing energy blasts, while alien warriors surged forward. The Zathar defenses wavered under the pressure. Soldiers looked to the generals for guidance, but the generals were uncertain, hesitant. Then Ethan stepped. Forward, with swift, deliberate movements. He organized squads into flanking positions, using the environment to create choke points. High ground was reinforced, snipers positioned strategically. The war machines were drawn into traps where they became vulnerable. Every decision was calculated, every action precise. Slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. Valessa felt a mixture of awe and relief. She had known humans were resilient, but Ethan's ability went beyond resilience. It was genius and understanding of tactics, psychology, and leadership that even the most seasoned Zaither generals struggled to match. Soldiers began to rally under his direction, morale rising as they saw the enemy falter. The enemy commander, realizing his forces were being outmaneuvered, called for a retreat. But Ethan had anticipated this as well. Quick strike teams cut off escape routes, and the enemy was forced into surrender. By nightfall, the battlefield was quiet, the coalition defeated, and the Zaither Empire safe once more. The nobles approached Ethan, some bowing, others offering reluctant praise. Valessa joined them, her expression a mixture of pride and astonishment. "You have done what no one thought possible," she said softly. "You have saved the Empire again." Aditham shook his head, modest as always. "I only did what was necessary. The Empire and its people must survive. That is all that matters." Valessa studied him, realizing fully that his strength was not just physical skill or battlefield strategy. It was his mind, his discipline, and his ability to act decisively under pressure. He had become more than a human visitor to the palace. He was a protector, a leader, and a force that could not be ignored. The following day, Valessa summoned the council. The generals were reluctant, some still struggling to accept a human as an equal. Yet Ethan's recent victories could not be denied. Valessa spoke first. "Ethan Cross has proven himself in battle and strategy. He is not merely my husband, but a protector of the Empire. His counsel must be respected." A silence fell over the council chamber. The nobles exchanged uncertain glances. Some nodded slowly, others remained skeptical, but all were forced to acknowledge the truth. The human had changed the balance of power. It demonstrated a strength beyond any expectation, and had saved the Empire from destruction. Ethan, ever calm, simply nodded. "I serve the Empire and its people," he said. "That is my purpose, nothing more." That evening, Valessa walked with him through the palace gardens. The air was cool, the alien flowers releasing a sweet fragrance under the moonlight. "You have exceeded every expectation," she said. "Not just in battle, but in leadership. I am beginning to see the full measure of your abilities." Ethan looked at her, his expression quiet but sincere. "There is more to strength than force. There is wisdom, discipline, and the will to protect. That is what I have tried to show." Valessa nodded, understanding. "What?" "Even knowing this, I feel there is still more hidden within you. I wonder what else you can do, Ethan Cross." He smiled faintly. "Strength is often revealed when it is needed most. Perhaps the universe will ask more of us, and we will rise to meet it." The palace was calm that night, but the victories had changed everything. Nobles whispered Ethan's name with newfound respect. Soldiers followed his instructions with trust, and Queen Valessa began to view her human husband not as a novelty, but as a true partner. Someone whose strength and intelligence were invaluable to the Empire's survival. For the first time, she felt that the Zaither Empire's future was secure, not just because of armies or technology, but because of the human who had proven that true strength lay in the mind, the heart, and the will to act. Ethan, standing beside her under the starlit sky, did not boast or demand recognition. He had revealed enough to change perceptions, to protect the Empire, and to earn respect. But he knew that challenges would come again, and when they did, he would be ready. Humans had survived far greater odds, and he was determined to ensure that the Zaither Empire did as well. Valessa realized, with a mixture of pride and anticipation, that this was not the end. It was merely another step in a journey that would redefine everything. The strength of humans, the future of the Zaither Empire, the partnership between a queen and the man who had already proven himself extraordinary and deep within her. Valessa knew that the greatest revelation of all had yet to come. The palace woke to an uneasy calm. Reports from the Empire's outer sectors indicated a massive movement of enemy fleets, larger than any the Zathir had ever faced. The northern factions, already defeated, had joined forces with other hostile worlds, forming a coalition intent on absolute conquest. The scale of the threat was unprecedented. Even seasoned generals exchanged worried glances, uncertain how to respond. Queen Valessa moved through the grand hall with a measured pace, her silver hair catching the light of the floating crystals. She had faced countless crises in her rule. Yet this challenge felt different. The stakes were higher, the enemies more cunning, and the potential for disaster immense. Her gaze found Ethan, standing calmly beside the war table, observing the maps and reports. "Do you truly believe we can withstand them?" she asked quietly, though her voice carried authority. Ethan looked up at her, his green eyes steady and unwavering. "I do not just believe it, Your Majesty. I know it. We will prepare, and when the time comes, we will act with precision. Panic achieves nothing. Strength, strategy, and resolve will see us through." Valessa nodded, a mix of admiration and trust swelling within her. She had seen Ethan's abilities before in diplomacy, in battle, in guiding the Empire through near defeat, but she had yet to see the full extent of his true power. And now, faced with the gravest threat of all, she felt certain that he would reveal it. Ethan immediately began organizing the palace's defenses. Troops were positioned strategically across the main territories, supply lines were reinforced, and war machines were deployed in precise locations that maximized both offense and defense. Unlike the generals, who often relied on brute strength and tradition, Ethan used intelligence, speed, and adaptability to counter the massive enemy force. He anticipated every maneuver, predicting attacks before they happened, and preparing counters that left even experienced Zathir commanders in AEW. As the enemy fleets approached, alarms rang across the Empire. The coalition's ships were vast and heavily armed, their energy weapons capable of devastating entire cities. Soldiers braced for impact, while the nobles whispered, some fearful, some doubtful, about the human who claimed he could guide them to victory. Ethan, standing at the war table, traced movements on the map with a steady hand. "Overconfidence," he said calmly. "They believe size and numbers guarantee victory. We will show them that discipline, planning, and adaptability matter more than raw force." The first wave of the enemy fleet struck as dawn broke. Massive explosions lit the skies, and the sound of energy cannons echoed through the halls of the palace. Zathir defenses fired in coordinated volleys, but the enemy was relentless. The generals faltered, unsure how to react to the overwhelming numbers. But Ethan remained calm. He issued commands with precision. Strike teams intercepted enemy boarding parties, war machines were guided into traps, and ships were redirected to maximize their effectiveness. Every decision was calculated, every action executed with perfect timing. Slowly the enemy began to falter. Confused by the unexpected tactics and the efficiency of the Zathir forces under Ethan's guidance, Valessa observed from a high balcony, her heart pounding. The human's reputation as weak was meaningless in the face of Ethan's ability. Here was a man who could think faster than the enemy, anticipate their moves, and coordinate a response that not only protected the Empire, but inflicted devastating losses on the invaders. Hours passed, and the battle raged with relentless intensity. Enemy ships attempted to flank the palace, ground forces breached outer defenses, explosions shook the very foundations of the city. Yet Ethan moved with calm precision, directing forces, issuing orders, and adapting strategies on the fly. The Zathir soldiers, inspired by his composure and intelligence, fought with renewed vigor. Finally, the enemy commander attempted a last desperate assault, sending a massive warship directly toward the palace. Panic threatened to erupt among the defenders, but Ethan acted instantly. He coordinated energy shields, deployed strike teams, and used the terrain to neutralize the attack. Within moments, the enemy ship was immobilized, its crew captured or forced to retreat. The balance of the battle shifted completely. Valessa felt a surge of relief and admiration. The human she had once underestimated was now the decisive factor. In the Empire's survival, his intelligence, courage, and leadership had turned what seemed like certain defeat into victory. As the final wave of enemy forces retreated, the palace erupted in cautious celebration. Soldiers cheered, nobles bowed, and the Empire's people began to realize that their survival had been ensured by a human, not a mere warrior, but a strategist, a protector, and a force of extraordinary skill. Valessa approached Ethan in the aftermath, her violet eyes shining with pride and gratitude. "You have done more than I could have imagined," she said softly. "You've saved the Empire, not just with strength, but with mind and will. I misjudged you." Ethan looked at her, calm and modest. "I did what was necessary. Strength is not only in force, it is in foresight, patience, and action when it matters most. The Empire survives because we acted wisely together." Valessa felt a deep respect and trust growing within her. The human who had once seemed ordinary was now undeniably extraordinary. His abilities, his intelligence, and his unwavering courage had proven that humans were not weak, not primitive, and not insignificant. The next day, celebrations continued throughout the palace, but Valessa knew the significance went far beyond ceremony. The Zaither Empire had witnessed the true strength of a human Ethan Cross. Whispers of his deeds spread quickly, and even the most skeptical nobles began to accept that their perception had been flawed. In private, Valessa walked with Ethan through the palace gardens. The air was filled with the scent of alien blooms, and the moonlight reflected on the fountains like silver. "You have shown me something I did not expect," she said. "Humans can be more than we ever imagined. You are more than a husband, more than a protector. You are a force the Empire cannot ignore." Ethan's green eyes met hers steadily. "I only act because it is necessary. Strength is revealed when the need arises. There is no desire for glory, only duty and the will to protect." Valessa nodded, realizing fully that this human had changed everything. He had not only saved the Empire from destruction, but he had also reshaped its understanding of power, courage, and partnership. His presence, his intellect, and his calm authority were now integral to the Empire's future. In the weeks that followed, Ethan continued to train, advise, and guide the Empire's forces, not through arrogance or command, but through competence, insight, and the quiet respect he earned from all who observed him. Valessa worked alongside him, learning from his strategies and adapting her leadership. Together, they strengthened the Empire, prepared for future threats, and built a partnership founded on trust, respect, and mutual understanding. One evening, as the stars stretched across the alien sky, Valessa turned to Ethan. "I once thought you were a common human, someone who would merely be part of a political alliance. I was wrong. You are extraordinary. I see now that your strength is more than physical. It is intelligence, courage, and heart combined. You've changed everything." Ethan smiled faintly, a rare expression that conveyed both humility and warmth. "I only do what is necessary. Your Majesty, strength is not measured in appearances or assumptions. It is measured by action, judgment, and the will to endure." Valessa felt a profound sense of hope and admiration. Humans, she realized, carried strengths that could not always be measured by size or technology. Ethan had proven that one human, guided by intelligence, courage, and integrity, would change the course of an empire. The Zaither Empire had faced its greatest threat and survived. It's not solely through might, but through the ingenuity and resilience of a human who had once seemed ordinary. Now, the bonds between queen and husband, human and alien, become a partnership capable of facing any challenge the universe might present. And as Valessa looked at Ethan beneath the starlit sky, she knew one thing with certainty: the greatest strength the Zaither Empire had ever known was standing right beside her. The human who had been underestimated had revealed his true power. The Empire was safe, the nobles inspired, and a new era of respect and collaboration had begun. Together, Queen Valessa and Ethan Cross would lead the Zaither Empire into a future stronger, wiser, and more united than ever before. the story of the human who defied expectations had become legend, a tale of courage, intelligence, and unwavering resolve that would echo through generations. And in the quiet of the palace, under the endless stars, both of them knew that the universe still held many challenges, but with trust, strategy, and heart, there was no threat they could not face together.